Hello, and welcome to the show where myself, Pauline Roche, and Swain Hunter, and occasional guests guide you through the world of online communications in a show which was the brainchild of the late great internet evangelist John Popham. Unfortunately, Swain is unable to join us today, but I'll do my best to keep the show on the road. So let's talk about the weather. How has the weather been today where I am? Well, this week even, it's been very sunny a lot of the time. And even now when I'm looking out the window, there are clouds, but I can still see some blue sky breaking through. And I'm hoping it'll be a really lovely day as the day wears on. Stay warm and lovely. So this week is Small Charity Week, and I'm going to try and bring up the on the screen to share the screen, which is what usually Swain does, but I'm going to try and do two things today now. So I'm sharing the screen for Small Charity Week, and this week celebrates and raises awareness of the essential work of the UK small charity sector, who make an invaluable contribution to the lives of millions of individuals, communities and causes across the UK and the rest of the world. And it's brought to you by the Small Charity Week partners who with the support of sponsors, ensure the work of small charities is recognised and celebrated. And the partners are the FSI, Small Charities Coalition, Social Value UK, Fundraising Everywhere, Local Giving, NAVCA, NCVO, and Global Giving. And the digital sponsor of the week is PolicyB, which is a charity and not-for-profit insurance company. So I think there'll be lots of interesting things to see and do this week. And under the events section next, I'm going to bring you more about the other things that are going to be happening. But another event that's on this week is Digi Leaders Week. And I'm going to try and bring up this one now. So this is a week that happens every year. This year it's from the 14th to the 18th of June 2021. And scrolling down the screen, it's the UK's biggest single gathering of people focused on digital transformation. So they invite anyone who sees themselves as a leader in the UK's digital marketplace for ideas, initiatives and services. Is your organisation or place one of these? Then Digital Leaders week is for you. And they're inviting people to take part because those are the answers, and those who are driving forward digital transformation in the UK are speaking, running workshops, sharing the very best practice, and offering solutions that are practical and real. So it sounds like there's something for everybody who sees themselves as part of the digital space. And again, there are lots of different events as part of Digital Leaders Week. So I would encourage you to think about investigating. The website is https://week.digileaders.com. So do have a look. So back to Small Charities Week, and there are several different, every day has a different theme basically. So the theme for today is I Love Small Charities Day, and I will bring that up again. So on screen now we have the day that's dedicated to I Love Small Charities Day, and this is the kickoff day for Small Charities Week. And it's today to raise awareness of the work of all small charities across the UK, and is led by NAVCA, a national membership body specifically for local sector support and development organisations, also known as local infrastructure in England. So there'll be plenty of things on this day to educate and inform people about the work of small charities. And then tomorrow, the second day of Small Charities Week, sees Big Advice Day. And Big Advice Day will see volunteer experts donating free one-to-one advice to small charities by telephone or web conference, with sessions covering the issues that matter to that charity. There'll also be a series of informative live webinars available for attendees. And bookings to receive one-to-one advice on Big Advice Day are closed, but you can still submit pending queries via the Advice Hub, which will be reopening in July. And queries submitted will be matched with an advisor when the hub reopens. Tomorrow, during Big Advice Day, there will be 4 webinars, and they are Ask the IT Experts, Where Next for Income and Growth, Investing in a Post-COVID World, A Guide to Charity Reserves, Everything you need to know about reserves in 30 minutes, and A Beginner's Guide to Cybersecurity. So it sounds like there'll be lots of interesting and useful sessions that people can learn from on that day. I'll bring up small Big Advice Day again, just to show people how much there is. And the FSI is a wonderful organization, very well established, and lots of good information giving out. So recommend that to people. Okay, moving on, we will go to the next day of Small Charity Week, and on Wednesday is Policy Day. And I'll just bring that up on screen. And this is a day hosted by NCVO. Small charities, the blurb says, small charities are the centre of civil society. In the UK, 97% of charities have an annual turnover of less than £1 million. But in terms of impact on local communities here and across the globe, their contribution is phenomenal. It's therefore important that the voices of small charities are heard about in the noise created by larger and better resourced charities. And to mark Policy Day 2021, events will be held to raise the profile of these organisations with policymakers and influencers. So one of the things that's going to be happening is a Small Charity Policy Day webinar 101, How to Influence Local Elected Officials. And this is an interactive webinar delivered in partnership with Small Charities Coalition to support small charities to influence decision makers at a local level. The session will help participants know how to build relationships with and influence MPs and councillors. And attendees will receive practical tools and resources from NCVO's know-how platform to support their future influencing work. And that sounds like it would be useful for anybody engaged in policy work with small charities. And that webinar is on Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11:15 a.m. There's a there are actually webinars now fully booked, but they are taking names for a wait list in case any spaces become available. So hopefully they'll be able to fit in everybody who wants to go. And the webinar is going to be presented by Chris Walker, Policy and Public Affairs Manager at NCVO, Rita Chadha, Chief Executive at Small Charities Coalition, and Judith Garfield, MBE, an Associate at Small Charities Coalition, followed by a 20-minute question and answer session. So it sounds like that will be useful for lots of people. So the next day of Small Charity Week is Thursday, 17th of June, and this day is called Fundraising Day. Always very useful for most small charities I know anyway. The perfect opportunity for small charities to engage with current and new supporters to get fundraising. This year, the day will be supported by a number of partners and organisations, and they include local giving, fundraising everywhere, and global giving. And they are going to be running webinars for small charities and other events that will be helpful. And 2 webinars that I want to draw your attention to are Ensuring Your Fundraising is Legal and Ethical, a regulatory update and Q&A with a fundraising regulator. And another webinar, Where Do We Go From Here? Restabilizing and Diversifying Your Income in 2021 and Beyond. So again, sounds like an excellent event for anyone involved with small charities to get involved in. And on the Friday of Small Charity Week, it is Small Charity Big Impact Day. And let me share the screen, this one. And this one is to raise awareness of the incredible impact that UK small charities have locally, regionally, nationally and internationally, led by the FSI and Social Value UK and sponsored by Policy B. This includes 3 webinars: Know Your Value, From Outcomes to Impact to Social Value, run by Social Value UK. Who Said Only the Big are Mighty, Making an Impact as a Small Charity, from Eden Tree, and Gathering Wellbeing Data, Different Methods and Making It Meaningful, run by Social Value UK. So again, sounds like an event that would be very useful to anyone involved in small charities, especially when you're considering your impact. We're often asked to include impact in our funding applications. So if we can measure it and know what to count, then it sounds like something very useful. There's a social media competition and live Q&A panels as well as part of the day. So please do have a look and see what would be useful for you in that day. So that's the Friday of Small Charity Week. And last but not least, on Saturday of Small Charity Week is Appreciation Day. And this is the last event of the week. And it's a day to reflect and appreciate the work of small charities everywhere. It's a big thank you to small charities, their staff, volunteers, trustees and supporters for all their efforts throughout the year. And of course, it's been a really difficult year for lots of small charities and individuals affected. So we know there'll be some great stories to be told. And this day is going to be led by the Small Charities Coalition, who will be celebrating and showcasing some of the UK's unsung heroes from small charities, sharing their stories and achievements. So they're asking people to watch this space for a few special surprises and announcements along the way. So that sounds like very exciting. Nominations have closed to nominate the SCC Stars of 2021, but they are going to be showing information about those stars and who they were nominated by on this day. Okay, so that's the end of Small Charity Week marking. And we hope that anyone listening who's involved with small charities will find something useful on that day. Just a note, we do recognise other events happening around this time, but we like to concentrate on 1 or 2 special things that we hope will be of interest to people getting online for the first time or coming online during the pandemic or using technology a bit more. So we hope those things that we mentioned are useful. Moving on to our next story for today. We don't have a guest today, sadly, but we hope to have one next week and in the weeks to come again, because we do find it useful to have somebody to talk to about their life in digital and what they've learned, what they're learning, and what their difference they're making to people, other people during the pandemic. So we will, we do have several stories, so we hope that we are still keeping you informed and entertained around stories around digital. So the first story that we have in our list of stories this week is from insidehousing.co.uk, and the heading is the pandemic highlighted how digital exclusion can exacerbate inequalities and how can landlords address this. And I'm bringing up on screen now the article from Inside Housing. Inside Housing was publication that John Popham, who founded this show, did occasionally get covered in as well. So and housing was very important to him, and so it's good to have a story about that. So let me talk to you a bit about what's in the story. And it talks about how the past year has shown how lack of connectivity or digital skills can limit all areas of daily life. And ensuring people are not living in digital poverty needs to be a priority, according to James Prowse, the regional manager at broadband provider HyperOptic, as he calls upon social housing providers to put it at the top of the agenda. And at HyperOptic, they've worked with housing charity HACT, HACT, over the past couple of years, for instance, to look at the impact of digital exclusion and prove its significance. And they've sought to understand and measure that impact on well-being, and that research informs their approach to the social housing sector. And obviously the pandemic, as we know from lots of other stories we've covered in the last year, has served to highlight and increase that impact. If you're in a care home, digital exclusion has meant you've not been able to see your family for many months. If you're a young person, you've not been able to properly access education that moved to solely online, which may affect your future prospects. Tower Hamlets, a London borough with whom they work, came to HyperOptic early on in the pandemic and told Hyperoptic they were worried about the number of children who could not join online learning because of a lack of devices or a fast internet connection. Where pandemic pressures have led to people losing work, digital exclusion has meant it has been more difficult to apply for a new role, not least because libraries, one of our favourite topics, were also shut during lockdowns. If people have had a job in which they can work from home, a lack of digital access may have prevented them from doing that work efficiently. And too often, delivering internet access or giving tenants a choice of broadband provider is considered solely an IT project and viewed in that silo. But actually, this article says, it is a housing quality project and a community project and a customer communication project and an employment and growth opportunity as well. There are a whole host of benefits that are relevant to so many aspects of a social landlord's work. It's also relevant in the broader context of a place. Ensuring people are not living in digital poverty should be equally important to local councils, to education partners, to health partners, to third sector organisations and working with marginalised groups. So we hope that some of those topics also resonate with our listeners and that they find this article useful. Our next story is from a website called dartington.org.uk, and the heading is 9 Steps for Reaching Families Remotely. And this again is about what might have happened to people, what might be happening to people during the pandemic, and what might be useful for them to know. So I'm sharing the screen now with the heading 9 Steps for Reaching Families Remotely, and the organization is actually called Dartington Service Design Lab. So the text of the article says that what they found was digital wasn't a golden arrow, but a handy tool in practitioners' tool belts when reaching families remotely. And they've developed the 9 steps, providing practical guidance for practitioners working with families. And I know this will be of use and interest to a lot of people because helping their children to get a good balance between being online and being on screen and being doing other things like going outside and playing and having a rest and generally just balancing the digital life with the online life, if you like, with offline life is very important. So the 9 steps that Dartington have developed can be used, they say, to aid day-to-day delivery, service development, and for new service design. They can inform key questions for delivery teams to consider together and with funders when seeking to shape the future of support and ensure all those that people work with are able to engage safely and meaningfully. They say digital inclusion is more than helping families with devices and data. It's about working with them to understand their what they call a digital door. Some families may only have a smartphone or feel more comfortable on Facebook Messenger than on Zoom. Some may need to access events or support outside of office hours via recorded videos or one-to-one message. They're saying there's no one-size-fits-all approach. So they're saying, consider what channels you have available as a service and how families interact with them. For example, social media platforms allow families to engage informally and in their own time. Others, such as Zoom workshops, give people the option to access a targeted activity. It's important to understand families' digital needs and preferences alongside what their hopes are for accessing your service. They say strive to ensure you have a range of digital options that provide genuine choice and support families to reach their goals. And what they've learned from practitioners is that most families do have devices, sometimes just a phone, but they can still engage digitally, ensuring that what they deliver is still accessible from smaller devices is vital. And this was from an early years practitioner. So that was that story. And I'm going to pause just there. So that story, reaching families remotely, they talk about the 9 steps, and I thought it'd be useful to look at the 9 steps as they are on the website, the dartington.org.uk website. So they say before you start, they say this section is the first of 3 steps to support you in getting yourself ready for changing up your service, you'll need to start by taking stock and resetting, building your digital skills up internally, and opening the digital door for families. So on screen they have 1, 2, 3, and each section has more information about the steps you need to take. Then steps 4, 5, and 6 come under the heading "Lay the groundwork," and this the second stage, they say, is all about laying the groundwork for adapting your service. They say you need to be nimble. First picture. Number 4. Number 5, be clear on purpose, flexible, and form. So you need to reflect on your purpose and form, and then connect and share it with peers as item 6 to help promote the work you're doing. And the next section then is about the final stage, once the service is underway, called In the Flow, all about continuing to build on the success of your adaptations. You need to help people feel in control, number 7. Number 8, be by their side for transition. And number 9, play to their strengths, play to each family's strengths. So we hope that you find those that information, that guidance useful. It could be used in lots of different services. So I think other people would find it helpful too. If you can hear noise in the background, by the way, the local council is doing some gardening on grass, cutting the grass outside the front of the houses. So that's why there's noise. Okie dokie. So moving on, our next story is entitled "A National Story of High School Students' Digital Skills Paints a Worrying Portrait." And this is from Stanford University, Stanford researchers finding that students in the US who were charged with vetting news stories and other digital content that they tried mostly in vain to find the truth. So that's a kind of a worrying story to hear about. But the content says that a new national study by Stanford researchers showing a woeful inability by high schoolers to detect fake news on the internet suggests an urgent need for schools to integrate new tools and curriculum into classrooms that boost students' digital skills, the authors of the study say. So this is the largest study undertaken, and researchers from Stanford Graduate Youth School of Education devised a challenge for 3,446 American high school students who had been carefully selected to match the demographic makeup of the American population. And rather than conduct a standard survey in which students could self-report their media habits and skills, the team came up with a series of live internet tasks. And the results were published online in the journal Educational Researcher. And they highlighted what the researchers say is an urgent need to better prepare students for the realities of a world filled with the continual flow of misleading information. They say that the study is not an indictment of the students. They did what they've been taught to do, but the study should be troubling to anyone who cares about the future of democracy. And this is from Joel Breakstone, director of the Stanford History Education Group and the study's lead author. They're saying we have to train students to be better consumers of information. And in one task, students were asked to vet a website proclaiming to disseminate factual reports about climate change. 96%, wow, failed to discover the publisher's ties to the fossil fuel industry. Overall, the researchers found the students were too easily swayed by relatively weak indicators of credibility: a website's appearance, the characteristics of its domain name, the site's about page, or the sheer quantity of information available on a website, irrespective of the quality of that information. So it is worrying to hear that groups that were students that should be able to distinguish between fake news and real news, 96% in one task weren't able to say what was the truth and what wasn't. So this study was funded by the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. So we obviously all need to be on the ball and not assume that you're because of any background that you have that you will be able to that you won't be able to be fooled. So let's not be fooled. Okay, moving on, we have another great story, which is about how digital literacy can help close the digital divide. And it can, I suppose, feel like a lot of these stories are similar, but it's interesting to me anyway, as a journalist, to see what can be brought up, what's been written about to kind of reinforce what we think we know, and what actually seems to be the truth, that digital literacy can help to close the divide that that isn't good for all of us um, to be divided, to be separated from the usefulness of being online. So this is the heading, and it's from a website called policyoptions.irpp.org, and it's their April 2021 magazine, and a story by Cara Brisson-Boivin and Samantha McAleese. And it's actually a story from Canada, but as we know, we can and do learn a lot from other countries that we can bring back to the UK. And this story says that a national digital literacy strategy with a strong education component would empower more Canadians to meaningfully engage online. And they say that in First Nations communities, just 30% of households have internet connections with the recommended speed required to participate in online school, to work from home, or access healthcare information. In fact, they say, internet access during the pandemic is emerging as a social determinant of health that has long unequally impacted historically under-resourced communities and specific demographic groups like women, newcomers, and seniors. And the article goes on to say, in addition to barriers to work, school, and healthcare, the pandemic has also impeded political engagement. For example, they say, in Newfoundland and Labrador's recent election, voters were required to register online for a mail-in ballot. So issues of access and connectivity effectively excluded some voters who became frustrated by the new process. Not surprisingly, given the effects of the pandemic, much of the emphasis on Canada's digital divide has been on digital access. When talking about internet access, there is often a focus on the urban/rural divide. Rightfully so, given the impact of this geographic divide on Indigenous communities, low-income families, and Francophones. But Canada's digital divide is not only geographic, it's embedded in social, economic, and cultural contexts, and it intersects with categories of race, class, gender, and age. And often these multiple and intersecting forces are left out of conversations about digital access. So Media Smarts, which is Canada's not-for-profit centre for digital media literacy, they advocate for an intersectional analysis of digital inequality to capture the full extent of the digital divide. And this intersectional approach acknowledges digital literacy education as an essential component of the strategy for addressing this ongoing and deepening divide. For example, they say, while access to network technology is necessary to register for a COVID-19 vaccine, so are the skills required to find and share trusted online health and science information. Similarly, working and learning online has implications for users' privacy and information protection. Understanding these privacy implications requires that users develop critical digital literacy competencies. Canadians may have a device and adequate internet access, but without the fundamentals of digital literacy, that is to use, understand, and create with network technology, users will not necessarily benefit from all the internet has to offer. The article goes on to say there's also a lack of diversity in the digital literacy community among researchers, practitioners, educators, program developers, policymakers, and industry leaders. And this problem of representation is linked to larger issues of access to digital technology and inclusion in online spaces. A lack of adequate and meaningful representation with the digital media literacy community translates to policies and practices that do not consider the immediate concerns or experiences of diverse and historically marginalized communities across Canada. So they say Canada needs long-term investment in a national digital literacy strategy to fully realise the right to digital literacy. Alongside a commitment to nationwide broadband by 2030, Canada also needs an immediate commitment to digital literacy education that acknowledges the multiple and intersecting barriers people face in accessing, using, and understanding digital technology. Again, a story that we can all relate to about the rights of people to be able to access digital technology and use it to have better lives. And so we move on to one of the next stories in the list, and this is entitled Creating a Digital On-Life Balance During Summer Break 2021, a family plan for preteens and younger teens. And this is a story, as we often cover, another story from the US from a website called thewhitehatter.ca. And they're saying, let me just bring it up on screen so I can show you what I'm looking at. Yeah, this is the story. And there's a picture of a number of elements there with what look like 4-leaf clovers, maybe, and a phone screen and a TV, a screen, a monitor screen. And then in the bottom left-hand corner are the icons for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, and Messenger. And as I say, the heading is creating a digital online balance, on life balance. Sorry, that's a word coined by Professor Luciana Floridi on Life World. Although many parents, and the explanation is, although many parents see a difference between the online and offline world, today youth see as one world, or what the professor has coined the on-life world. And the moral of this story, I suppose, is remember, not every day needs to be a tech day, but when it is, the power of 3 can help find the balance when it comes to screen activity. And we know many parents are concerned about parenting in an online world, so we hope this article will be of use to lots of you. So the question is, what are well-respected researchers saying specifically to youth and their technology use? The question should not be how much time is your child spending online, but rather what are they doing with that time? As Professor Sonia Livingston has stated, the measure shouldn't be screen time, but rather screen activity. So they're not saying that parents should allow unrestrained free-range consumption of technology during the summer break. Rather, they're suggesting a balanced use of technology, the internet, social media, and online gaming should be the goal. Their suggestion is to gamify screen activity using the power of 3 and apply it to youth and their on-life world to help them find a tech balance this summer. So the first category is social use, and this includes using social media to stay connected with friends via text messaging, or interacting with their peers on social networks like Instagram, or engaging in an activity they enjoy, like online gaming. The second category is physical and active use, and this is where a teen can integrate technology to become more physically active, both inside and outside the home, using apps such as Ring Fit, an exercising action role-playing game for the Nintendo Switch, Pokemon Go, or geocaching using a mobile device. And the third category is creative and educational use. And this is where youth use technology to learn coding. Why just play a game when they can learn how to build one using coding, develop a personal website, creating their own digital branding they can control for sport, college, university, and job opportunities, and to share their interests with others. Learning how to type, which will allow you to code faster, create how-to videos, or even watch educational shows and documentaries to increase their awareness of the online world. And now that they've identified the three categories, the article suggests placing them into a ranking specific to daily online activity they're recommending as a starting point, using the power of 3. So for creative and online use, they're suggesting 3 hours more or less. Social use, 2 hours more or less. And physical stroke active use, 1 hour more or less. And this would be a total of 6 hours per tech day, 4 hours of which are encouraging teens to become producers and creators of content, and also to become more physically active to the integration of technology. So therefore only 2 hours are dedicated to passive consumption to connect with friends or for the purposes of relaxation and fun. So it sounds like there will be some really helpful suggestions there for parents who get a bit frustrated maybe with the amount of time their teens spend online. Yeah, I know in my own family, there is concern sometimes about the amount of time young people in our family are spending online. I'm probably also concerned about me as well, to be honest, as I spend a lot of my life online, but I use it for work and I can justify it like that. But I know I get sucked into rabbit holes sometimes, and I would like to have some strategies to not do that. So the more I can learn about this, the better as well. Okay, so our next story comes from the BBC, and the heading is "The Women Fighting for Digital Equality." And this is a story from the 21st of May. And again, I will share the screen. Here we go. And this is by James Fitzgerald for BBC Minute. And it is a screenshot of women holding mobile phones. And, you know, obviously lockdown have changed the way people are spending their time, forcing people to spend the past year more learning, working and socializing online. But in many countries, women have been missing out. The article says women are less likely than men to have access to the internet in nearly every region of the world, according to the latest figures from a UN agency, the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. The so-called digital gender gap is most noticeable in Africa, where the ITU estimates 37% of men have internet access, but only 20% of women. And what's more, the divide appears actually to have widened in Africa since 2013. There's a quote from Regina Honu, founder of Saronko Academy, a tech school for women and girls in Ghana. And she says, if you don't have digital skills, you're going to be left behind. Before COVID, if we put out an invitation for people to sign up, we would have 100 or 200 women. After COVID, we had more than 2,000 women signing up, which sounds like a wonderful number altogether. It's not easy to explain why the digital gender gap is wider in certain places than others, says Buthima Gurmazi, Director of Digital Development at the World Bank. But social, cultural, and financial factors all appear to be at work. Buthina reckons it's linked to the broader gender divide. In regions where women do not have equal rights to own land, for example, or equal rights to the job market, when we add a digital dimension, the gap will clearly be deeper than in other regions where those rights are equal. And she says the COVID situation hasn't been gender neutral, making life even harder for some women. For another participant, it was around 2018 that Nirmala Kumari used a simple mobile for the first time. Today, she's a skilled user who is also helping other women in India to get connected thanks to her work for a social media network run by tech firm Gram Vani. Typically, in her East Indian state of Bihar, if there is only one handset per household, men tend to get priority. And as for the women, some of them do not even know how to charge the device. But apparently the pandemic has changed this. Nirmala told the BBC in an interview between India's devastating second wave of COVID infections. Before India's devastating second wave. During the lockdown period, as the entire family used to stay in one place, the mobile phone was more available at home, she said. So at that time, women did get mobile access. She has a project called the Mobile Vani Project, which gives women a voice on an audio-based media platform. Users can dial in, listen to material on topics such as maternity advice, and can even record and contribute their own words to a conversation as well. This service is designed to be informative and to boost women's confidence with using mobiles. Coronavirus has made the platform even more useful for many people, but harder for Nirmala to promote than before. She switched to a remote working method that relies on her calling influential women who operate within the village community self-help groups. She says, we told them to ask others to listen to this audio platform, MAMP, M-A-M-P, because it had important information and because we needed their stories about coronavirus, good ones and bad ones, she says. The trick worked and we got some very inspiring stories. Gender-based violence during lockdowns has been described by the UN as a shadow pandemic. If there's discrimination in the offline world, that is going to be projected onto our online spaces as well, says Janat Fazal, who manages the cyber harassment phone helpline in Pakistan. Spearheaded by the country's Digital Rights Foundation, it is the first of its kind in South Asia. After Pakistan entered lockdown, the Lahore-based helpline logged a 500% increase in calls. Typical complaints included women being bullied or impersonated on social media, or being blackmailed when their personal information was shared without their consent. In Pakistan's patriarchal society, these female victims may be blamed for supposedly dishonoring their families. In extreme cases, they may even be killed for it. The helpline offers legal help, advice on digital security, and psychological assistance for those in distress. During a peak earlier in the pandemic, Janat's team found itself needing to offer around the clock support. Men tend to navigate online spaces without thinking something will happen, she says. But women, on the other hand, have this constant fear. We need digital literacy and training so that women are more confident using social media platforms and they're less vulnerable. Ms. Gormasi from the World Bank is hopeful that the issue of the digital gender gap is now more prominent in the minds of policymakers, including those in developed nations. And she says, I think what coronavirus did for the digital agenda was something unprecedented. And we can all say amen to that. Definitely, definitely, definitely. So it's good. In the article on the BBC, you can see some nice pictures of women with their phones. Regina Honu, who we mentioned as one of the speakers in the article, and Nirmala Kumari, a phone pictured with her using a mobile phone for the first time since 2018, which is when she started, and she's now helping other women. Okay, we've got a few more stories, I'm glad to say. The next one is about UFI VOC Tech Trust, the UK's leading charity for championing the power of technology to improve skills for work. And they've announced a new grant program. So I'll bring up the website on screen. There we go. The headline says UFI launches a new grant fund to help level up learning for those most impacted by the digital divide. So says that opening of June, the VOC Tech Challenge grant development and deployment of digital solutions that help adults to get the skills they need for work. So it sounds like there'll be lots of wonderful things happening to support those most impacted by the digital divide. The grants are, let me see if I can work out what the grants are. Let me stop sharing the screen. Go back to sorry, there was a slight break there, so I hope you're still with me. And let me relaunch the screen share. There we go. So the Rebecca Garrod Waters, who's the CEO of UFI, she commented, the VOC Tech Challenge Grant Fund comes at a crucial time for UK skills development and aims to identify solutions for those learners who, without positive intervention, will struggle to get the skills they need to work or progress in employment. I think the Challenge Fund is only going to be open for a month, so please do have a look on the website ufi.co.uk and find out more information about a grant fund to help level up learning for those most impacted by the digital divide. Okay, we've got a few more stories to cover. And the next one is from our friend Ciara Allman from Oxford University, who's doing this research into the digital inclusion. And let me just bring up the screen again. There we go. And the heading is Libraries on the Front Lines of the Digital Divide, the Oxfordshire Digital Inclusion Project Report. And the impetus for this project grew out of observing the realities of the day-to-day digital offering in libraries, with more and more essential services going online. Many people are turning to libraries to help them access e-government platforms, banking, and employment opportunities, among other daily activities. Well, anyone who works in a library will tell you that this has been going on for decades, at least certainly since the start of having the internet. And library workers have had to be helping people online for a long time. So the report does say this is a critical time to revisit and reevaluate how to deliver digital inclusion and access digital skills, assess digital skills, because we're entering into an era of compulsory computing. Okay, that's a interesting way of seeing it. She's saying that people do not have a choice about whether to go online or not. Many employers accept only online job applications, and the government's digital by default agenda means government services are increasingly accessible only online. So as a result, people are compelled to use digital devices and the internet in order to participate in everyday life. So this is a different environment from the digital world that existed even a decade ago. In this context, governments should be obligated to ensure that citizens can access and understand the digital world while recognizing the complexity and challenges of the digital world that people of all levels of digital fluency encounter today. The article says the UK government's digital strategies papers have consistently labelled public libraries as primary providers of digital access, training and support for local communities. Yes, they have. That's a great thing. But despite their prominence in public policy agendas, libraries are chronically under-resourced and underappreciated sites of stopgap digital help to people living in digital poverty. So many people there. Staff reported spending up to 50% to 70% of their time addressing digital help requests. In the year 2019 to 2020, this was in Oxfordshire, but I'm sure it's the same all over the country, digital helper volunteers provided over 800 hours of digital assistance in Oxfordshire libraries. But library staff reported that this volunteer provision was not at all sufficient to meet the level of need. As you can imagine, people need a lot of help. Usually when they're getting online, people can't remember their email addresses, can't remember passwords, don't know the difference between different types of kit, don't know what to get if they are able to afford their own kit. So all kinds of help is needed. The article says, based on our findings about who use the libraries for digital needs and what libraries are doing to address those needs, they make several recommendations about how to better address digital exclusion and to enable libraries to fulfill the roles they're already performing. That's good to see that now that acknowledged. So number one of these recommendations, there is a need to improve the digital skills of library staff, meaning that staff need to be digitally fluent themselves in order to address the high volume of digital help requests from customers. Number two, government and local councils must recognise and support what libraries deliver with funding to hire more staff, acquire more hardware, and support a digital learning volunteer programme that can supplement staff expertise and time. Number three, we need to shift the focus of digital inclusion agendas from digital skills to digital well-being, meaning that any digital inclusion programme should be embedded in a wider social inclusion agenda, because digital marginalisation is often bound up with other forms of social, economic, geographic and educational marginalisation. And again, it's something we've mentioned previously on this show. Number four, libraries must work to increase community outreach and awareness of the services they offer by reaching out to communities that might not know about their offerings, making libraries true community hubs for a diverse set of users. I have to say that most of the libraries I'm aware of, and I know plenty, already know that they and already do loads of community outreach. It is, as we've said, I think we said on last week's show, something about having the political will to make something happen. Well, we need political will behind libraries as well, to make sure they're appreciated and not left behind. And, included in planning, you don't need to start planning a new digital inclusion centre. We already have libraries. They can be used better. Okay, and our next story is the Secretary of State, Oliver Dowden, is being asked for detail of the government plans to end digital exclusion of older people. And this is from the National Pensioners Convention. So let me bring up that one on screen. Here we go. I'm looking forward to joining the National Pensioners Convention myself when I'm old enough. So it's the campaigning organisation for older people in the UK. And they're asking the Secretary of State responsible for tackling digital exclusion if he's simply paying lip service to helping older people get online. So they've sent a letter to the Right Honourable Oliver Dowden MP, Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. And this is from NPC General Secretary Jan Short, who cited the government's current bid to data grab, in apostrophes, everyone's personal health files from GPs in England as a prime example. Now we know from having talked about that on last week's show and the week before, that and having monitored what's been happening, that piece of work has been deferred until the 1st of September. But this story came about when was it written? I'm stopping sharing now so I can check the screen. It was only 3 days ago. Okay. So anyway, people are catching up on that, what's happening in the story. And let me share again so I can have it on screen. There we go. So the UK's largest campaign group says that all the information about NHS digital plans to extract all the records to a central database by 1st September can only be found on the UK website, government website. And the only way you can choose to opt out of the data grab is by downloading a form for the GP online. So the NPC had written to the minister asking about government plans on digital inclusion and exclusion of older people, but they were dissatisfied by his reply. And in response, the NPC is calling on the government to invest more to ensure the drive to digital only, by the government and businesses does not exclude those who are not or cannot, for whatever reason, get online. In a new letter to the Minister on Digital Inclusion and Exclusion, Jan Short said, although you say it is a priority to ensure that nobody is left behind, there is no actual action stated in your letter as to what is intended to make that so. The issue of patients' records being collected by NHS Digital, the fact that everything to date has been online, nobody actually knew about it until a week or so ago, is a serious case in point. Although the process has now been delayed for 2 months, we are still concerned about the method of contact with 55 million patients and an open, transparent explanation of the terms of reference for access to data, third-party security, and commercial uses. Well, that's pretty straightforward. So I don't think we need to explain anymore what the National Pensioners Convention want from government and around digital exclusion. So the next story was from was actually a YouTube video, which I'm not going to play now because I'm not sure how it'll work on screen. But there is a poem, lyrics from a song that I want to read out. So the story is that it's called "I Think I Know My Own Mind," and they're saying people find it sensitively communicates issues of digital inclusion among older adults with and without cognitive impairment. And there's a video, as I say, on YouTube. It's a personalized summary of the findings of Sarah Walcock's PhD thesis that investigates the use of everyday technology among older adults living both with and without dementia. And the lyrics have been created to prompt conversation among older adults, particularly those living with dementia, their friends, family, neighbours and supporters. People can then apply these findings and make technological choices that they think would work best in situations that may be changing. So here we go. I think I know my own mind and what I can do. I need technology to be easier to use. You can design tech better with my needs in mind. And if I'm able and permitted to try, then perhaps I will learn and even buy a new shiny thing that signifies I'm just like you. I'm a part of society with the same jobs to do. We all feel the pressure of playing our part, but for me, it's an extra squeeze and a band on my heart. I don't want to let you down when you think that I can, but I'm not sure, and that burden weighs me to the ground. And the lyrics do go on, but they were the main lyrics that caught my eye. And we do need to not let people feel left out. And I do, when I'm having conversations with my mother, we've mentioned previously on the show, when I talk to her about technology and any issues she's finding with making things work and getting into websites and knowing what's going on with her own devices, her tablet and her smartphone, I criticize the tech. I do think tech could be designed better. With AI, we might have even more chances of making things run better for everybody. But certainly, some technology could be designed better. And I don't know, I didn't bring that on the screen, no. So I'm moving on to the next story now. So this is from IVAR, the Institute for Voluntary Action Research, who written a report on response to change, how small voluntary organizations are using tech. So this story from IVAR interested me because they've done something on tech. Start somewhere. It was a report they did a few years ago. I really found very useful. So I'm always interested when they write about tech, and I thought this was particularly good because they worked with CAST on this. So Ellie Hale from CAST, Annie Caffin, and Chris Mills. And the report is talks about how COVID-19 has forced small voluntary organizations, brackets they call them SVOs, to experiment with tech. And I'll bring up the share the screen so you can see what report I'm looking at. There you go. And this forced small voluntary organizations to experiment with tech. And for many, this has enabled them to become more accessible and relevant to their communities and to explore new ways to tackle the digital divide. And before the pandemic hit, Ivor was working with CAST to understand how SVOs were using tech as a follow-up to their Start Somewhere study that I referred to earlier. And they followed the journeys of 4 charities responding to COVID-19 through digital. And here you'll find tips and advice, stories of embracing digital, and suggestions for how funders can support SVO's use of tech. So that was really, it sounds like a fascinating report. And they have, if you go to the website, ivar.org.uk, and look at the research, they have key points, and this is one of 7 for smaller voluntary organizations and those who support them. And I'll read out some of these headlines. I think it'd be helpful to have them to hand. And number 1 is that COVID-19 has forced small voluntary organizations to respond to change by using tech. Number 2, everything now includes a digital or tech element, and many SVOs are leading the way, which is great to hear. Number 3, we know digital is not always inclusive, and how can we start to change that? So they're saying, as a response, SVOs have come up with bold, creative, and thoughtful ways to maintain contact with users digitally. They follow digital best practice and reusing what's out there, as well as testing and tweaking as they go. And by responding this way, SVOs have proven that digital is indeed possible and sometimes even preferable. So they're recommending that SVOs take time out to understand the existing digital habits and preferences of the people in your organization, those you're supporting, as well as those of your own team, to experiment with new tools and delivery methods, focusing on, a quick win, maybe small, quick, cheap step you can take to test something new and see if it works for people. Driving new practice, SVOs have been driving new practice around what inclusive, human connection focused and responsible use of digital looks and feels like. They're saying to be bold and experiment with new tech, but don't wait for a global pandemic to try these new things. Set a clear objective for your project to see whether a tech product that will meet your needs is already available. There's no need to, most times, to build something new. Off the shelf responses will usually give you what you want at a reasonable price. There's free tools you can reuse, and many require no coding knowledge at all. Test, trial, and pilot new tech. I can't emphasize this enough. Test what you're trying to do. Don't just launch it. Test, trial, and pilot, and keep reiterating until it's working the best way it can for your organization and your users. And also reach out to other SVOs to seek advice and share learning about tech. And I recommend this very highly. There's lots of great networking groups, especially on Facebook, who can help you find your solution so you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel yourself. The pandemic has magnified the digital divide, and SVOs have been trying to find ways of resourcing blended service models that offer choice and cater for a wide spectrum of digital access and confidence levels. So there has been some hesitancy over the use of tech, but digital inclusion can unlock people's access to a vast array of services and resources. And finally, they say, understand the barriers to tech access and adoption faced by your community. Incorporate digital inclusion objective when you're designing activities and services, and advocate for public policies that overcome digital exclusion, such as hashtag fix the digital divide and hashtag click zero. So I hope people find that really useful. There's also key points for funders, which I won't go into today, and then resources of small charities. So a great, really helpful report and website with lots of good resources on. And I think that might bring us to the end of the program for today. Let me just check. Yeah, there are two other stories. Okay, I'll do one more story and then we'll call it a day for today. The last story I'm going to do is entitled Digital Inclusion in Ireland. So, okay, there's some sentimental attachment to this for me. And this is the latest NESC report, Digital Inclusion in Ireland, Connectivity, Devices and Skills. And that focuses on digital inclusion, what it is and why it's important. So it's going to be, the report's going to be officially launched on the 1st of July. But they say that among the key dimensions of digital inclusion are connectivity, access to devices, skills, and the confidence to engage with ICT. On the dimensions, the report states that connectivity in Ireland, broadband connection rates and speeds are below average for households, businesses, and farms in the border, Midland, and Western areas. For those in lower income quintiles and for those depending on welfare payments, in some areas, no broadband is available. On access to devices, Irish people on low incomes are more likely to own older and second-hand devices, to have internet access only on their smartphone, and to have limits on the amount of data they can use. Those with higher incomes are more likely to have broadband and access to the internet on a range of devices, including smartphones, laptops, and desktops. These devices are much easier to use for employment or training, and finance is also a barrier to adoption of new technologies for Irish businesses and firms. On the skills gap, it's an important issue when it comes to skills gap, the pace of change in ICT. Digital competency requires continuous learning, and as well as the technical skills of being able to use devices, ICT users also need to be able to evaluate the accuracy and trustworthiness of online resources. In Ireland, skills are lower than among older people and those on lower incomes. And confidence. Challenges are also encountered by those with poor literacy. In business and farming, smaller setups with owners or managers who are older tend to lag in ICT skills and to find it difficult to compete for staff with good ICT skills. And this further affects their adoption of new technologies. There is an interplay between lack of skills, lack of motivation, and poor use of ICT, both internationally and in Ireland. So there's policy recommendations, 5 overarching recommendations to ensure that the gaps identified are closed. One is to develop a national strategy for digital inclusion with a key focus on coordination and a strong commitment to fine-grained measurement of progress. 2, create a comprehensive framework for digital skills progression. Number 3, support digital inclusion at community level. Number 4, deliver targeted supports for material access to key groups. And number 5, enhance guidance for digital and assisted digital public services and complementary channels. So I hope you found that useful. I had that on screen. So just to make sure that I was sharing the right story, close that. And honestly, doing all this yourself, maybe I didn't have it on screen. Maybe I'll just share it on screen now so people can have a quick look at what the report looks like. The website is called socialjustice.ie, and that's the report there, Digital Inclusion in Ireland. Scrolling down, yeah. So hopefully people found that useful. That was published on the 9th of June. So we hope that people get some interest out of some of those stories. that you continue to find the Dr. Tech Show of Use and Tech Talk on Hope Radio. Shout out for our listeners in South Birmingham. We hope to have Swain back again with us next week. And in the meantime, have a great week. Thank you very much.